Today, it's all about the plum tomato varieties. Hey friends, welcome back to Mustard Seed Homesteading. My name is Megan, and if you're new here, I'm so glad you stopped by because today what I want to do is focus on every plum tomato variety that I'm growing in the garden this year. Now, just last week, I posted a video on all the different pepper varieties that I'm growing in my raised beds as well as my green stalks, and so I figured it would be a really good idea if I shared all the different plum tomato varieties as well as all the sandwich tomato varieties that I'm growing in my garden also. Because not only do I have Roma tomatoes that are my go-tos every year, but I'm always testing out new varieties. And so I want to be able to show that to you because as we walk through the beds, I am going to be posting pictures of those Roma tomatoes so that you have an idea of what they look like, especially because as I do my weekly garden tours, as well as my green stalk garden tour and harvest videos, you'll now know what varieties I am actually growing and what they look like. So this video is going to be focused completely on Roma tomatoes, while the next video that I post will be completely focused on my sandwich tomatoes. I love being able to think out loud on camera with all of you because sometimes when I'm out here, that's when my brain starts to get super creative, or I think of some ideas that could be helpful in a video. And so I'm just a lot of times speaking out loud, and I love being able to do that out here with all of you. Now, what I want to do is just focus on the plum tomato varieties that are growing in my raised beds because that's pretty much where most of them are growing. I do have some in my green stalks, but they're the same varieties. What I can do though is quickly show you some of the green stalks and how they are growing in there later towards the end of the video. Before we get started, I thought it would be a good idea to show you an aerial view of the beds that are growing all of my Roma tomatoes. So this bed as well as this one has a lot of different varieties of Roma tomatoes, while this bed has all of my Martino Roma tomatoes, and this bed over here has all of my San Marzano as well as a couple of San Marzano 2s because I'm testing those out this year. Let's start with my favorite Roma tomato, the Martino Roma. And you want to know something, friends? This tomato as well as the San Marzano tomato were the very first plum tomatoes I ever grew, and I grow them every year in this bed as well as that one. I will insert a picture of the Roma tomato right here for the Martino Romas. But friends, what I love to do when I grow these tomatoes, I love to put basil around the edges of all of my tomato beds. Not only is it a great companion plant, but basil always pairs beautifully with a tomato, and I always like to freeze dry or harvest a lot of basil all at one time and then make little freezer cubes out of them so I can just throw them into meals whenever I need them. Plus, I love to make pesto. I actually make large batches of pesto and then I put them in the freezer. But I will say the basil that I chose to put around the Martino Romas is a Tulsi Holy Basil. So Tulsi Holy Basil, and then this bed has mostly the lemon basil. I like to make a tea out of that. I don't use that so much for cooking. I just love to make tea out of it. So I will grow a lot of Tulsi Holy Basil as well as the lemon basil. I do have to come out here very soon and start pruning some of the bottom parts of the plants though, because I like to have at least, I don't know, maybe about a half a foot, give or take, maybe more like 10 inches actually, of space right here so that it can breathe in between all of the plants, just because down here there's a lot of humidity. So I do need to come out here and do that. And what you see in these beds are 8-foot bamboo sticks. I love to use bamboo sticks in my raised beds. They've done very well for me. Now, what I am doing very differently this year though with my plum tomatoes in both of these beds is I'm no longer growing my Kentucky Wonders along this trellis while having the tomatoes out here. What I'm doing differently is I'm actually using the tomato plants in 5 of these squares, and I'm putting them against this trellis right here so that they can grow over and get support that way. It's something new that I'm trying this year, so I'm not sure how it's going to look, but I am very excited about it. So you can see right here, I'm trying to start clipping the bottom part of the tomato plant so that it can start growing right up this trellis. And then on this side is all of my San Marzanos and San Marzano 2s. So what I did was I planted the San Marzano 2s in the 9 squares here. and then the rest are San Marzanos. I really don't know the difference between the two, but we'll find out this year if there even is a difference. But I figured, you know what, let me just grow them and see what happens. And as far as the basil in this bed, I am growing the large leaf basil because last year I had mammoth basil in the other bed and it gets a lot of sun in that spot and a lot of the leaves just kept burning. So that's why I put the Tulsi Holy basil back over here. But I figured, you know what, let's try the large leaf here because this does get a little bit more shade than the other bed. So hopefully I don't have burnt leaves. Now I will say that the grids that are in these beds are my favorite. They save so much time. I bought these from Garden in Minutes and I absolutely love them. When we build our wood beds here, we're going to have 6 2x5s. I plan to buy those water grids to put in these beds as well. And in place of this pallet, I'm also adding another 2x5 bed that will get a water grid as well. Now we're going to talk about this bed, but I do want to quickly mention something. So every year, these 4 large grow bags that I have, and I believe they're 25-gallon grow bags, I put in 3 Roma bush tomatoes. I already planted one. I have to harvest these 3 Brussels, but once I do, I will put Romas in there. But I put a Roma tomato on every corner of this trellis, and then what I do is put a basil plant in between. And when I tell you this produces so many plum tomatoes, I was so surprised. I want to say the last 2 seasons that every year that is exactly what I'm growing here. So you can see up close what it looks like. And I put Thai basil in here. So this year is my first year growing Thai basil. I'm looking forward to growing it because it smells really good, but I'm very excited to have these growing here. Side note, I love having tomato plants that just start growing out of the ground. This is a total volunteer. The last 2 years this has done that, and I put a little bit of soil and some worm castings and threw a little bit of straw on the ground, and then I put a bamboo stick to give it support. So I can't wait for this to grow. I'm also testing a Roma bush tomato in a 1-gallon grow bag. I'm not expecting a lot, but I want to see how it does. Okay, so this bed, we're going to start from this side and work our way down. The majority of the basil in here is lemon basil. Now, some of them did die on me after I planted them, and they don't look the best right now because I did plant these not too long ago and they do need a little bit of time. Just like this bed, when I first planted the Tulsi Holy basil, it looked almost dead, and now look at them. They're absolutely beautiful. So the way this bed looks right now will probably be the way this bed looks in about a week or 2. And the other basil that I did plant in the spots where some of the lemon basil just didn't make it is the large leaf Italian basil. So this first plant is actually a new variety. This is the hybrid Better Boy Plus. Now, you know, it's kind of funny, friends. I was actually looking up that tomato before I started filming, and I think I accidentally put this tomato in the wrong bed because I think that's more of a sandwich tomato. I could be wrong right now, but I think it is, and that's okay. It's not really a big deal because the majority of the tomatoes in here are plum tomatoes. What I like to typically do is put kind of a bushing tomato at the very ends of the bed. So usually I put a Roma bush tomato at the end, but I was trying to test some new varieties out, so I placed this here. So this tomato right here is the Sheboygan Roma tomato. I tried these out for the first time last year, and friends, I really liked it. I'll put a picture right here. They were beautiful plum tomatoes. Those and the Amish paste are probably almost up there with the Martino Roma as well as the San Marzano. And then this one right here in the front is a Roma bush tomato. This was actually seed that I bought from the Dollar Tree. What I like to typically do is put the same variety in 2 squares. So I'll put a tag right there, and then that means that both of these are the same variety. Not all of them are like that. However, some of them are. So this one right here is the baby Roma tomato, which I like having the little size Roma tomatoes because you can just throw them in salad, eat them fresh, and they're just really fun to grow. And then this next one is the striped Roma tomato. I think it's always fun to grow a tomato that just looks fun and looks pretty. They did pretty good last year, which is why I'm growing them again this year. And then these next 2, I actually put a tag in both of them, and they're the same one. I'm not sure why I did that, but this is the Incardi paste. I might be saying that wrong, but this also grew pretty good last year. There are some varieties that I did grow before that I want to try out again just because I might have not had the best results. So sometimes what I like to do is give them a 2nd or 3rd try. By the way, I just noticed this. Look at those little baby Romas. They're already starting to grow. There's one right there, and then there's another one peeking behind the bamboo stick. Aren't they so cute? And these 2. These are the Roma bush tomatoes from the Dollar Tree. Then I do have another Better Boy in the back here. I must have thought that they were plum tomatoes because I honestly don't know what I was thinking, but we have a second one here and it's all good. And then in front of that is another Roma bush tomato, the seed from the Dollar Tree. Okay, this one is fun. So these two right here is the speckled Roma tomato. I'll put a picture right here. Again, this was a fun one that I grew last year as well, but I wanted to try it again because last year I had some really good success, but I felt like it wasn't as good as I was hoping, so I am trying a lot of these varieties again. And then these last four are also Sheboygan because I wanted to make sure that I grew enough of them because those plum tomatoes are pretty large considering the other paste tomatoes like the baby Romas and the Roma bush tomatoes are a little bit smaller, whereas these are much bigger. And then this last one is a new variety, and this is the Lemon Boy Plus tomato, which the Lemon Boy Plus tomato is also a slicer tomato, which is kind of funny. I think I was just thinking in my head that I wanted some spots, even if they were in the plum tomato beds, to put some of these new varieties that I wanted to try. So we'll have that in there as well. And now for the last bed, the basil that I chose to put in here is the red Reuben basil. When I tell you this basil is absolutely beautiful, the purple and the greens in this basil is absolutely stunning. I grow it every single year and I thought it would be perfect to put right here with the plum tomatoes. So the first Roma tomato right here is the Roma bush tomato, except this seed is from Botanical Interest. Sometimes what I like to do is compare seed from company to company just to see if there is a difference. A lot of times I don't find a big difference, but I always like to test them out. And then these first four squares are all Sheboygans. Can you tell I really do like Sheboygans? And look, I'm already starting to see flowers right here. That's exciting. I cannot wait for that. But I will say that I did have a lot of Sheboygan starts, so I also wanted to use them up, which is why I have more of them planted in the beds. However, a lot of the tomatoes that are in the green stalks are pretty much Roma bush tomatoes. And then these next two are the speckled Roma tomatoes. Next is the striped Roma tomatoes, which is an absolutely beautiful Roma tomato. And these two back here are actually both the same. They're Amish paste tomatoes. So I think because they kept breaking on me, because typically I have them this way, I put them right here. And then I think this one, yeah, this one is also an Amish paste. So these three are all Amish paste. And then I did stick a Dollar Tree Roma bush tomato right here. And then in these two squares, we have some more baby Roma tomatoes. And then these last two squares is some more Encardi paste or Encarchi. I gotta figure out how to say that correctly, but I have them both at the very end. And then this last one is another Roma bush tomato. So those are all of the different varieties of plum tomatoes that I am growing. And as I shared earlier, I give weekly backyard garden tours as well as every other week green stalk garden tour and harvest, which I might up it to a weekly. I'm not sure yet, but my goal is to show the progress of how everything is growing, and then of course doing some harvesting as much as possible. And then like I said, these 4 bags will have plum tomatoes, and then throughout the green stalks I have bushing Roma tomatoes as well, which let's go ahead and take a quick peek at how they're growing over there. So just like I have the trellis in between the 2 large rectangle beds, I also decided to put a bunch of green stalks on this newer trellising deck that my hubby built not too long ago. And what I decided to do was not only put some cucumbers on here to trellis, but I had the idea of putting bush Roma tomatoes in the pockets to grow, because sometimes they grow really tall. And I figured, you know what, this would allow it enough space to grow as tall as it wants to. And how fun would that be to see a bunch of tomatoes growing along this trellis? So here's a Roma bush tomato that is growing out of this one pocket. And again, my hope is for it to just lean against this trellis so that I can grow as many tomatoes as possible. And I want to show you how I plan to put this tomato plant in the trellis. So I'm just gonna put it right through. I love tomato plants because they're so forgiving. They don't break easily as other plants do. And so I'm going to try to train it in and through the trellis, and we'll see how it goes. This is a total experiment what I'm doing with the Roma tomatoes against the trellis, but I'll never know it unless I try it. And for me, whenever I experiment or try things different in the garden, that is the best way that I learn. Here's another Roma bush tomato that I have growing out of the green stalk. And I actually used one of green stalk's newer trellises right here, and I have it attached, and we'll just have to see how it goes. I actually already see flowers right there. That's exciting. So I'll definitely be showing the progress of these. All of these green stalks on here is new for me this year, so I don't even know what to expect, but I am very excited to see how everything does on here. I just had to show you, look at that cute little sunflowers, isn't that precious? I love sunflowers, especially dwarf sunflowers. I put a lot of dwarf sunflowers in all of these green stalks as companion plants. They are going to look so pretty. I also have Roma bush tomatoes in these two green stalks as well that I have on these two platforms, and this newer trellis that I put in the very middle. The trellis is actually for the cucumbers. However, if the tomatoes start to grow up at 2, it's perfectly fine. So this is a total experiment for me this year as well. All right, well, I hope it was helpful by me sharing all the different varieties of plum tomatoes that I'm growing in my garden, because I don't know about you friends, but I love to hear videos like this because there's a lot of varieties out there. In fact, the company Seeds and such has all these different determinate tomatoes. I almost went hog wild on buying a bunch of different varieties, and I stopped myself because I grow a lot in green stalks, and because I grow a lot in my backyard, not only do I love my indeterminate, but I really like determinate tomatoes because they're just easier to manage. And so I love to hear what others are growing and why they like them so much, which reminds me, and I don't want to forget, please leave your favorite plum tomato that you grow in your garden. You might have one, you might have more than one, but leave them down below because I would love to hear the different varieties of plum tomatoes that you like to grow. They may be the same ones that I'm growing, which is just further confirmation that they're a really good plum tomato. But if you can leave that in the comments, I would really enjoy it. Well, friends, I'm so glad that you all stopped by. I enjoy so much sharing everything that's growing in my garden, and I just want you all to know how much I appreciate every single one of you and always look forward to seeing you every week. And I want you to remember this, friends. I want you to be encouraged, stay encouraged, and I want you to always stay inspired. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.